You can believe in the existence of ghosts and you can doubt it, but the fact is that over the past 130, 140 years, countless ghost photos have come to light, many of which have turned out to be the result of fraud, whether for money-making, sensationalism, or other purposes. Although in today's world it takes only a few minutes to put together a ghost photo that looks completely authentic using various computer programs, it was not so easy in the past. In the next few minutes, you'll discover 10 old ghost photos whose authenticity has never been disproved, no matter how hard the doubters have tried. The Ghost of Lord Combermere. Wellington Henry Stapleton Cotton, aka Lord Combermere, was a British soldier and conservative politician in the 1800s. He died on the 1st of December 1891 when his brother hit and killed him in an unfortunate accident with a horse-drawn carriage. While all the family and household staff were attending the Lord's funeral in a cemetery more than a quarter of a mile away, a photographer named Sybil Corbett wanted to capture the deceased's library so that the picture would show the Lord's favorite chair. The photo was taken, but after developing the film, Corbett was shocked to find that something was in the picture that was not there when he took the picture. At the time, it could take up to an hour to take a photo, so it is possible that a servant sat in the chair for a short time and its shape is visible in the picture. However, the servants have repeatedly claimed that none of them were in the house at the time. All were present at the funeral of the gentleman. However, this is not the only story connected with the Lord. At the funeral, the family noticed that the lock on the family vault was moving unnaturally, as if it had been opened, and after the funeral, there were several instances of coffins being thrown all over the crypt. Afterwards, they had to be put back in place at each funeral. Cowboy in the Graveyard. Terry Ike Clanton was proud of his ancestry, as his ancestors belonged to the notorious Clanton Gang, who made a dubious name for themselves in the Wild West more than 100 years ago. In 1996, Terry and one of his friends went to the cemetery, and Terry had a photo taken of himself in period costume, hoping to show off the picture to his friends. When he took the picture, he was surprised to see the strange figure behind him, as he and his friend were the only ones in the deserted cemetery when the picture was taken. With no other explanation for the phenomenon, Terry couldn't help but think that they had caught a ghost, even though he never believed in the paranormal. The man has since set up a website about the strange photo, where anyone can learn about his family's past, the gravesite, and the ghosts that haunt it. Faces in the Water. In December 1924, in New York, on the SS Watertown, James Courtney and Michael Meehan, two crew members, were cleaning the ship's galley when toxic fumes were released from the cleaning agents. Unfortunately, they did not realize the danger in time, and both died very quickly from poisoning. The rest of the crew buried the dead in a watery grave. A few days later, several people began to see two faces in the water on several occasions, including the boat's captain, Keith Tracy. The eerie sighting was reported to their superiors, who suggested they take a photo of the apparition if they could. Captain Tracy obtained some cameras, and on their next trip, they finally managed to photograph the faces. 6 pictures were taken in total, the first 5 showing nothing of note, but by the 6th, the ghostly faces were clearly visible. Naturally, they all thought that the 2 faces could not be those of anyone other than the ghosts of the sailors who had died earlier. The crew subsequently reported many instances of dead faces approaching the port side of the ship, then fading after a few seconds and finally disappearing. The phenomena only ceased completely when the entire crew of the ship was subsequently relieved. Freddie Jackson. Goddard Squadron served in the First World War. The only group photo of them was not released until 1975, when someone discovered a ghostly face next to one of the soldiers, which was not supposed to be there, because the owner of the face was Freddie Jackson, who died 2 days before the group photo was taken in an unfortunate accident, fatally injured by the propeller of an aircraft he was dismantling. His funeral was held on the day the photo was taken. It seems that Freddie did not want to be left out of the group photo. Perhaps this is why he was seen next to his commander. His face was also recognized by his comrades. The Stowaway. In 1959, Mrs. Mabel Chinnery was visiting her late mother's grave when this photograph was taken. She had taken the camera with her to take a picture of her mother's headstone, but before she got into the car, she clicked the machine to capture her husband, who was alone in the car. Or was he not alone? When the couple looked at the picture, they noticed a figure with glasses sitting in the back seat. Mrs. Chinnery immediately recognized the mysterious passenger as her dead mother, whose grave they were about to visit. The photo was then examined by an expert who said, "I may be risking my reputation, but I can tell you that the photo is real." But before I continue with the various ghost photos, if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel for more content. Thank you. Spectre of Newby Church. England, North Yorkshire. Newby Church was built in 1870 and has never at any time been associated with ghosts, spirits, or demons. This was the case for nearly 100 years until Reverend K.F. photographed the altar in the church in 1963, but the picture showed something else too after the film was developed. The Reverend was shocked to see the apparition, standing in a long cloak-like dress, wearing a strange mask that looked like some kind of medieval monk. As soon as the picture went viral, doubters immediately pounced, calling the Reverend a fraudster, claiming that he had used double exposure to make the strange figure appear translucent. The Reverend was deeply offended, as he had never had any interest in lying. Those who believed him believed that the picture was not really a ghost, but a demon. The photo is still a matter of debate, but doubters can benefit from the fact that the apparition, from its position, must have been 9 feet or more than 2.5 meters tall, and that the church has never had a person of that height. Although if it is a demon, why couldn't it be that tall? The Ghost of Hampton Castle. One day in 2003, James Fawkes, a security guard at Hampton Castle, witnessed a disturbing and shocking scene while on duty and watching the monitor of one of the security cameras. The castle has always been notorious for its ghosts, but this was the first footage of one of them appearing. The footage clearly shows the doors of one of the outbuildings being pushed open, whether by a draft or anything else, and then a grotesque figure appears in the doorway. The ghost acts as if it has a solid physical body. It grabs the doors with its hands several times and finally closes them. The whole appearance of the creature is strange and disconcerting, but perhaps the face and head are the strangest, because, although the footage is of poor quality, the first thing that comes to mind is a skeletal skull. Skeptics have raised the question, how did a man or ghost from the time of Henry VIII know how a modern fire door works? Although a frame of the recording was only made public in Chicago's The Sun-Times on the 21st of December 2003, the incident actually happened 2 months earlier, in October, which, given Halloween, might give an explanation after all. Who wouldn't want to prank others at a time like that? It's another question as to who would have gotten into the well-guarded mansion in such a costume. The Little Boy from Amityville. Anyone with a little knowledge of ghost stories will almost certainly have heard of the Amityville horror story. The story in a nutshell. In 1975, George Lutz and his family moved into the huge house at 112 Ocean Avenue in New York City with high hopes. Little did they know at the time that just over a year earlier, the house had been the scene of several brutal murders. One night, Ronald DeFeo had slaughtered all 6 members of his family, seemingly without cause or pretext: his mother, father, and 4 brothers, 3 of whom were still children. At the time of his arrest, DeFeo testified that he was compelled to commit his brutal act by voices that compelled him to obey. Soon after moving in, George Lutz and his family began to experience increasingly ghostly phenomena, which eventually became so severe that the family left the house just 28 days after moving in and sought the help of para-researchers. The task was taken up in 1976 by Mr. and Mrs. Warren, who had already uncovered and solved several ghost stories. They took many photographs during their investigation, and one of their team, Jane Campbell, took this picture. At first glance, it may not seem unusual, but if you look closely, the figure of a small boy appears behind the railing on the left-hand side of the picture. The photographer swears that she was the only one in the house at the time. But then who belongs to the terrifying eyes and face? Could it be one of the dead brothers? 12-year-old Mark or 9-year-old John returning to the scene of their brutal deaths? The Brown Lady. Lady Dorothy was mistress of Raynham Palace in the early 1700s. She is recorded as having died in 1726, but it turns out that Dorothy kept a lover and her death was faked. When her husband learned of her activities as an unfaithful wife, he hid her from public view and locked her in a corner of the house until her death. Later, Dorothy's ghost was repeatedly seen by visitors to the palace, most often on the oak steps of the house's entrance hall, and it was thought that she might have been imprisoned there somewhere by the wrath of her cruel husband. This picture was taken in 1936 by two photographers, Hubert C. Provand and his assistant Indre Shira. To this day, it is considered one of the most authentic ghost photographs in the world, despite the countless theories put forward by skeptics to explain the phenomenon. The most popular theory was that the image was created by a camera malfunction. They were working with an old-style tripod camera, whose accordion sometimes let in too much light, so that the light flickering in the living room doubled when the camera's flash fired. Much to the chagrin of disbelievers, this remained a conjecture. It could never be proved. Well, that's all for the ghostly images, which have never been proven to be nothing more than hoaxes. Leave a comment, like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel to be notified of my future uploads. Thank you for your attention. I will be back soon with the next video.